African countries, and will be able to export even Central Africa, Angola.
Dangote Refinery under siege. Corrupt officials and foreign interests are allegedly sabotaging Nigeria's largest refinery, even bribing journalists to push a negative narrative. Could this be a coordinated plot to keep Nigeria dependent on oil imports? This and more is what I will be showing you in this video. But before we continue, if you're watching us for the first time, kindly like, comment and share this video. Also, don't forget to click on the notification icon to stay updated with our latest content. We'll be back shortly.
Welcome back to Lagos TV show.
The home of crime scene.
It's happening in the street again.
The center of political news, celebrity gossip, religious gossip, and happiness in the society.
Join us, the voice of Africa.
Recently, the Dangote Refinery has faced a wave of attacks and sabotage attempts from various quarters, including both local and international actors. Notably, there have been allegations that certain corrupt individuals, including senior officials within Nigeria's oil sector, have conspired to undermine the refinery's operation. ATIKU Dangote himself has accused these officials of attempting to derail the project by refusing to supply crude oil and by spreading false claims about the refinery's product quality. Some of these officials are believed to have stakes in foreign refineries and are reportedly keep on maintaining their control over Nigeria's oil import. Additionally, a recent development involved an investigative journalist exposing an attempted bribe from an international NGO. The journalist was offered 800,000 naira to write a negative piece about the Dangote Refinery, framing it as harmful to the environment under the guise of climate concern. This revelation has fueled suspicions that there are coordinated efforts from foreign interests to disrupt the refinery's operation, further complicating the situation. Let's watch this video of a journalist speak about this experience over the issue. We will be right back.
An international NGO, Dialogue Earth, is mobilizing a media campaign against Nigeria's first local refinery. In a series of posts on Twitter over the weekend, Hundeyin said the NGO tried to bribe him to write an article discrediting Dangote Refinery. He claimed he was offered 800,000 naira, that's the equivalent of $500 US, to write a smear piece against the refinery under the pretext of environmental concerns.
Well, earlier I spoke to David Hundeyin for more on this story. I began by asking him why he decided to go public with his allegations.
I thought that it's in the public interest. People need to know that there are external interests that have some sort of a stake or some sort of an interest in the preservation of the energy poverty that Nigeria and West Africa have historically faced. I don't believe that my going public with it in itself is going to change the world or anything like that. I don't think my profile is that powerful. However, I think that the power of public exposure is one of the last few real powers that regular people in this part of the world still have. I feel like a lot of the power that these foreign actors wield can be wielded because it's wielded in secret, because people don't even know that it exists. So prior to this incident, for example, if you were to come out and tell people that there are players in the global development space or the NGO space who would very much like the status quo to be preserved in terms of Africa being poor and Nigeria suffering from energy poverty despite being one of the world's largest energy exporters, it will sound like it's a conspiracy theory. But here you have hard evidence of a Western NGO, UK NGO funded by American money, quietly moving around, trying to arrange the pieces on the chessboard to create a narrative war against what objectively, regardless of whatever one thinks about the owner of the refinery, objectively, that refinery, which by the way is also the largest single investment ever made in the history of West Africa, $20 billion. There's this narrative war against this refinery being fought essentially by white people in London and New York, and then they're trying to use an African face to be the spearhead of this narrative war. That does not sit right with me, and I thought the public needed to know.
And it makes one wonder whether, you know, there's a link between this and why Nigeria's 4 refineries have refused to work for over 10 years now, over a decade now. Do you think that this is the MO of foreign entities to stop development, not only in Nigeria, but in Africa as a whole?
I mean, even before this happened, I happen to have quite close relationships with several people who work in and around the energy space. I myself work in the energy space, although in the sort of renewable part of the space. And one thing you will always hear is that getting funding for energy projects in Africa is almost impossible nowadays, because you will hear things like ESG, you hear things like energy transition, fossil fuels are bad. So basically, you're trying to get a pipeline constructed from Uganda, which recently discovered oil and gas reserves. So you're trying to get a pipeline constructed from Uganda through Tanzania to the port. So Uganda can actually benefit from its oil reserves. It can actually export oil and earn revenue to build infrastructure, right? Because most of Nigeria's infrastructure, for example, was built with oil revenue. Uganda doesn't have that infrastructure because they simply don't have the money. And now they have the opportunity to earn that money using that oil revenue. And then the financing to actually build the pipeline is being blocked because they are being told that you are not allowed to build any energy infrastructure that has to do with fossil fuel because of emissions. Meanwhile, Africa is responsible for 3.9% of global emissions. We don't register on the ranking. We might as well not exist. So what emissions are we cutting? We don't have anything to cut. You are looking at a starving man. His ribs are showing. This person is malnourished. He's about to drop dead. They are telling him that he needs to go to the gym and exercise and lose weight. That's what they're telling us. It makes no sense.
Yeah, this is what
this is not just this is a Pan-African phenomenon. Right. Prior to this, sorry.
So this is what Dialogue Earth said you should do in carrying out a spare campaign against the Dangote Refinery. And I'm wondering, now you have been offered $500. You turned it down. Is there any chance that other journalists or other individuals or entities may have been approached by not just this Dialogue Earth, but by other foreign entities, you know, to scuttle major projects in Nigeria? Absolutely,
100%. First of all, with this particular instance, I'm pretty sure that I wasn't the only journalist that they would have reached out to. I'm quite sure, even though I can't prove that yet. But even in the aftermath of going public, they already sort of mobilized a narrative response. So I'm not going to mention the name of the news platform or the journalist involved, but there's already been that pushback where they've sponsored articles in 2 major Nigerian online news mediums and referred to what I did as sensationalist, that essentially it's not that big a deal, that I kind of misrepresented what was being done, and basically that I'm an attention seeker. And I did it to, I don't know, to chase clout or something. That is really not that big a deal. That's the narrative that they've mobilized, and they've sponsored it and put it on 2 Nigerian media platforms already, who are happy to publish it, as they always are. Moving away from Nigeria, I have personal knowledge of incidents like this, where, for example, the EACOP, which is a pipeline that is supposed to connect Uganda and Tanzania to the port in Tanzania. There are native Ugandans and Tanzanians who have been paid by these foreign civil society actors. Their visas to the US have been facilitated to basically go to the US and speak to American audiences, including financiers and politicians and whatnot, and tell those people, influential people, that funding a project that is going to lift their African country out of poverty is bad for the environment. Right? And these people will listen to them because it's an African saying it. Obviously, you cannot love an African's country more than the African himself. Meanwhile, they are being paid to do that. That may not necessarily be even what they believe. It's the NGO that is paying them money to do that. I think there's a very serious moral problem with that.
And I'm wondering why $500. I mean, is that how cheap these foreign bodies see African journalists, you know, like yourself? And is this the first time you'll be approached, you know, to do such a hatchet job? And how did you, respond or react if it's not the first time?
So clearly, that is how much they think African journalists, or how much they think it takes to compromise an African journalist or to co-opt an African journalist's voice. Because, whether we like to hear it or not, the truth is that journalism on the continent is just generally not a very financially rewarded activity for most practitioners. So I'm guessing the market price that they have become used to, that this is what usually gets people to say how high when they ask them to jump, is this much. It's not the first time that I've been approached in terms of being commissioned to write a story or to write an article. It's a fairly common thing actually within the journalism space. If you have a good writing style that people like, or if you have a large audience, you get approached. And it's not the first one that I've turned down for ideological reasons. Sometimes I'll turn it down. Maybe it's some entity that wants me to write about Israel versus Palestine. And I'm like, I don't really feel comfortable writing about this. I don't feel like I personally should be commenting on this. I don't feel like I personally have a stake, and I don't feel like I should interfere in this, so I turn it down. But this is the first time that someone has come to me with an offer to write about something that affects my country and that affects me potentially, and basically told me to write against my own interests.
How do you expect, what kind of outcome do you expect after this revelation, especially on the part of government? What are your expectations?
I expect the government to do absolutely nothing, as they always do. The purpose of this wasn't to try and get a response from the government, but it was to educate the public, because I think that it's only the public now that can actually rescue this thing, because clearly the government of the day, at the very least, doesn't really seem to care. I'm being charitable in saying this, but at the very least doesn't really seem to care whether Dangote Refinery takes off or not. I think that, again, regardless of whatever anyone's personal feelings and opinions are about the person of Aliko Dangote, I think it would be a disaster for Nigeria and for Africa if a $20 billion investment dies. That absolutely should not happen. But I think the Nigerian government is, at the very least, completely lukewarm about it. We've seen officials from the oil regulators come out and make statements that sound like it's a competitor that made the statement. We saw an official come out and say that the Dangote Refinery's diesel has sulfur content that is above regulatory limits, and that in any case it shouldn't be, that one man shouldn't supply the energy, shouldn't control the energy market for Nigeria, which is true. But again, it shouldn't be a regulator coming out to say that, because it almost sounds as if the government is being antagonistic toward a private business in Nigeria, which is incredible. So my hope in going public with this was for Nigerian people to understand that there's a network of interests that would very much like to preserve Nigerian poverty, that would very much like to see them continue being poor, and that for the first time there is an opportunity to sort of very, very frontally and very visually oppose these interests. Because, as I said earlier, how these interests have generally worked in the past is by operating in the shadows. Occasionally, when they meet people like myself, people in the media space, they're able to get their way one way or the other. But now they were unfortunate enough to run into someone like me who, has a reputation for being a bit of a hothead. And I guess they regret that now. And I guess this has the fact that people can now see this hard evidence that this is the sort of skullduggery going on in the background, that this is not a conspiracy theory, this is real, this happened, this is in black and white. Then I think that does an important job of sort of rewiring the mental architecture of Nigerians, so that they understand that you actually do have enemies, both local and international, and you need to start being serious about being an active citizen, because if you're not, there are people who are very happy to sort of occupy that space for you and keep you exactly.
Nigeria stands as a pivotal moment, teetering on the edge of a national betrayal that could cost us not only our economic sovereignty, but also our future. The ongoing sabotage of the Dangote Refinery is not just an attack on one man's ambition, is a calculated assault on Nigerians' potential to break free from the shackles of corrupt officials and foreign perpetrators. The shocking revelation of deliberate obstruction and bribery attempt exposed a sinister network determined to keep Nigeria in a perpetual state of dependency, poverty, and exploitation. It is appalling that senior officials within Nigeria's own oil sector are allegedly at the forefront of this treachery. These are the very people entrusted with steering the nation's most critical industry, yet they are instead orchestrating its downfall. The allegations that these officials are refusing to supply crude oil to the Dangote Refinery are spreading falsehood about the quality of its products reveal a betrayal of the highest order. Why? Because their pockets are lined with profit from foreign refineries that thrive on Nigeria's continued import dependency. These traitors are selling out their country for personal gain, ensuring that the status quo of corruption and development remains unchallenged. The corruption doesn't stop at our borders. Foreign interests disguised under the banner of environmental concern are throwing money at anyone willing to smear the refinery's reputation. The investigation journalist who rejected an 800,000 naira bribe from an international NGO uncovered just the tip of the iceberg. This brazen attempt to undermine a project that could finally elevate Nigeria to a position of energy independence speaks volumes about the length to which these foreign powers will go to maintain their grip on our resources. They are terrified of a Nigerian that can refine his own oil, control his own energy destiny, and dictate his own term on the global stage. This is not just about the Dangote Refinery. This is about Nigeria's future. It's about whether we continue to be a pawn in the hands of corrupt elites and foreign corporations, or whether we finally seize control of our destiny. This stage could not be higher. A successful Dangote Refinery represents a direct threat to those who have profited from Nigeria's dependency on imported refined petroleum products. It threatens to disrupt the flow of billions of dollars that have for decades been siphoned off by corrupt officials and their foreign allies. This refinery is a game changer, and that's why they are desperate to see it fall. Well, I'll be putting an end to this episode here, but before then, if you're watching us for the very first time, don't forget to like, comment, share, and also click on the notification icons to get you notified of our next video. Stay tuned. Thank you very much for watching this episode. Please don't forget to like, comment, and share, and stay tuned for our next video.
the brain.